In exchange, the president got an extension of unemployment for the long-term unemployed, and, really interesting and sort of bizarre, two things that hadn't been discussed before were also done. For rich people, the capital gains tax, instead of being raised and had been talked, isn't going to be. It remains where it is. Even better for rich people, the amount of your wealth that you can pass to your heirs when you die without taxes, which was supposed to be left at $3.5 million, you can relax again, has been raised to $5 million. So the first $5 million you leave to your family if you die, which I hope you don't, in the next year or two. If you do die, please be comforted with the thought that the first $5 million that you leave to your children and others will not now be taxed. And the part above that will be taxed at a lower rate than had been contemplated. So the Republicans did really well. What did Obama get for giving these extras? You're going to love this, we're going to reduce for 1 year the amount of money withheld under Social Security. So those of you that have your income withheld from Social Security will enjoy an extra cash in your pocket, because the amount withheld for Social Security next year will be less than it was this year. Okay? So that's also a boost to lower income people and middle income people. But please notice, what has been done then is billions, many billions of tax incomes from taxing the rich will not be coming in. More billions that might have been gotten from taxing the estates above $3.5 million will now not be coming in. Social Security monies that had been projected will not be coming in, and unemployment payments for the people long-term will be going out. Okay, folks, what does this do to a deficit? Makes it much bigger. This after an election 1 month old in which almost every candidate pledged his and her undying commitment to doing something about our deficits. At this point, if we had time, I would play the national anthem. We would all have a few minutes to stand up, cross our hands over our hearts, and pretend that this is a reasonable series of events that we saw. So that was what was announced today. It was extraordinary because it represented, I think, yet another effort of President Obama to accommodate the election results and the Republicans by taking steps that will, to put the same thing I've just said in another context, people at the top got a really good deal. And mostly people at the bottom got some help. But the vast middle, which were the people that we were told were the people who had to take back America, just got the shaft, big time. So as I say, if we had more time, I'd play the national anthem, just so you'd appreciate the ironies of this situation. Okay? Worst of all, if you're a political thinker, all of these arrangements, this tax going back up, because we've just extended the reductions for 2 years. It's for 2 years. It'll be the hot issue in the presidential race of 2012. That's not good for Mr. Obama. Why he did this will be a mystery for people who do political analysis for a long time. Very strange.
He's going to switch parties.
What?
He's going to switch parties.
Yes. Okay, so that's the first one. That's the first one. Second item to talk about. There was a law passed this summer, a financial reform bill, named after the two politicians who led the fight. Christopher Dodd from Connecticut in the United States Senate, and Barney Frank from Massachusetts in the House of Representatives. It's called the Dodd-Frank or Frank-Dodge bill. Okay? And it's a financial reform bill. And it didn't amount to very much in the way of financial reform, but it had a few interesting provisions, one of which took effect on the 1st of December. And that was the requirement that the Federal Reserve tell us who they gave the money to in 2008 and 2009. In those months, particularly the last quarter of 2008, it was widely believed in the American banking circles and in the government that the economy was going to collapse and come to a halt. I really am not exaggerating. I'm not basing that on what I know now. I mean, basing that on what I was listening to and hearing at the time. It was real terror in Wall Street and in Washington. And the Federal Reserve very quickly started pouring hundreds of billions of dollars into a selective group of corporations who were lent this money, in effect, under very advantageous terms to get them out of the what was called a credit squeeze or freeze, at that time. When the economy collapses, one of the effects of an economy that's falling apart is nobody knows the financial condition of any of the people they used to do business with. I'll give you an example. In those days, we already knew that many large companies, and particularly large financial companies, had invested heavily in those securities we talked about that were backed by mortgages or backed by other kinds of debts. Asset-backed securities, ABS they call it. And it was known that the people with the mortgages that made those securities valuable weren't paying their mortgages anymore, and therefore those securities weren't worth much. And the unknown question was, how many of these worthless securities does any particular potential partner I do business with have? Because if they have a lot of them, then I'm not going to be able to do business with that person because I don't know that they can pay me. I'm not going to lend them any money because I don't know if they can lend me back, pay it back. I'm not going to enter into a contract with them because I don't know if they can fulfill it, since I don't know whether they'll be here. For all I know, they're Lehman Brothers 3 weeks later or 6 weeks later. So the credit system freezes. Nobody will lend anybody any money because no one knows who they're dealing with. And I'm talking about Bank of America, Citi, and all the big ones too. So nobody acts, nobody lends. But our economy depends on credit. Nothing can happen if there isn't an easy flow of money among the people who normally buy, lend, borrow, and so on. So the first thought of the government was you got to get the credit system going again. So you had to step in, either guarantee everybody's debts, and they did a good bit of that, but everybody's is a little much, even for the US government, or lend them a lot of money so they have the money even if the securities that they pledge as the collateral for the loan isn't worth anything. So the Federal Reserve made loans. At that time, certain players in the Congress, unusual men and women, made an unusual demand. They would like the Federal Reserve to please tell us who they're giving these enormous loans to. The person most famous for doing this was Bernie Sanders, a peculiar man from Vermont. I don't mean he's peculiar as a man. It's just he refers to himself as a socialist, and he's a senator, which is an unusual combination in our current history. And that's what he is. And so you could expect a person with such a dubious label would ask the Federal Reserve quite politely to tell us, please, who are you giving our money to? And the Federal Reserve told him to do something I can't repeat. And they told him they're not going to tell anybody.